Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Vince Travato here with the Brew Crew Review, joined on the set today by Scott Bartell. Scott, how are you today?
Doing great. I mean, obviously, everybody wants to talk Brewers right now, because we're taping shortly after unbelievable opening day weekend series. So with that being said, is Craig, Chad, are they here?
I mean, I was going to say by everybody, do you mean like 50% of our own podcast cast? I mean, I guess Craig has some sort of family commitments, and Chad, are you on? I know that you're a frequent contributor here to the Brew Crew Review. I will say I did speak with Chad on opening day, and it was about 3:30 in the afternoon or so, and he did tell me that he was, quote, going home to pass out because he may have imbibed or enjoyed the festivities a little too much on opening day. So I don't know if Chad's recovered from that yet. We are taping this on Sunday evening, so it is 4 days later, but he may still be recovering from opening day.
Well, I have a brand new puppy, and sometimes when I come home, like, she gets so excited, she just runs around, jumps around, goes absolutely crazy, like it's the greatest time ever. And then she's got to go pass out for a while. So it's, it's kind of the same thing.
Kind of the same.
So
I guess Chad and your dog
get excited.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, that's good. Well, hey, we're here to talk some baseball today, so we've made it. We have survived another off season. We're back for what I think will be a very exciting 2019 season. And Scott, we've now played 4 games, and we've already seen some really great highlights and memories already in this very, very young season. Let's talk through that first series here against the Cardinals, and why don't we start with opening day? What were your thoughts?
I mean, it kind of actually it reminds me a lot of the Padres series at the beginning of the year last year. Like there was just so much going on that it was just so much excitement, so many great memories that last throughout the year. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. And now you look at it this year. The only thing is that like last year it was like, oh, okay, we're on the road, we're playing the Padres. They're probably not that great, whatever. But, to start off with a 4-game series against the Cardinals and to be able to take 3 out of 4 and obviously take opening day and in the fashion in which we took them, it was just electric atmosphere. Like Milwaukee is pumped.
Yeah, no, it was incredible. So I did make it back. I flew back from Washington, D.C. for the game on Thursday and did miss you, by the way, at the tailgate party. But had a great time. It was electric. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's been, obviously an off season where I think that expectations were heightened. The Brewers didn't make a ton of moves this off season. We got, as we've discussed in other podcasts, some bullpen arms. We got Yasmani Grandal, but basically it's a lot of the same guys from 2018 that are coming back, at least in the position player sense. So, I think that the fans' expectations have been raised, and there was a lot of energy around the stadium this weekend.
Yeah, look at Sunday's game, for example. Now, I hate to say it, but let's be honest here. In years past, opening day was always sold out, and then maybe opening weekend not so much. Maybe two-thirds of the stadium is full, or even half. Just in years past. But man, this weekend it was definitely crazy. And not only that, but let's talk about an early season matchup with the Cardinals. Half the time the stadium's filled with just as many Cardinals fans. And you looked out when they're interviewing Yelich after the game, every fan is still giving him a standing ovation. Like everybody's there, like nobody left early. There's all these Brewer fans in the stadium, and it's just absolutely phenomenal to see. Like I know we've always had an amazing fan base, but opening weekend, like I said, is usually a little bit tough. And to see that, it just really got me excited about the entire season.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. And well, as you know, because you and I talked earlier today, I actually stuck around in Milwaukee for the last couple of games. So I went on Thursday, Friday, and today. So I just got back from the stadium, in the last 40 minutes or so. It was It was electric, and there were people that were. I don't think anybody left that I saw, at least, and it was incredibly electric at the end. And in fact, the talk wasn't, oh, are we going to leave because the Brewers are down? It was, hey, I literally heard a guy say to his girlfriend, hey, we got to stick around because I want to see the comeback. And that was the attitude that I heard expressed in the stands today. It was pretty cool.
Oh, it's so great. I mean, how many times do you just hear and don't get me wrong, some of it was very warranted, but in years past, there would just be just this overwhelming pessimism, just in the stadium, and they'd bring in somebody, or somebody would walk or something like that, let's say, or something bad would happen, and you just hear a murmur going through, it's just a low grumble of 40,000 people.
Right. No, exactly. And so let's unpack the series a little bit. So as I'm sure most of our listeners are going to know by this point, the Brewers go 3-1 in the opening series of the year against the division rival St. Louis Cardinals. But opening day ends in dramatic fashion. I guess that's one thing to talk about right away is the catch to save the game by Lorenzo Cain. I mean, it would have been a tying home run for the Cardinals. It would have maybe dampened some of that enthusiasm. I do think that there's something to be said for getting a little bit of momentum on opening day and at least not losing in heartbreaking fashion. Obviously, it's a long season, but if there's any game that's going to kind of set a tone, I think it's opening day.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was an exciting game. And then, of course, we have to talk about Christian Yelich, who, as of this taping, which, again, is on Sunday night after the Brewers defeated the Cardinals again today, not only had a game-winning hit in today's ballgame, but has homered in 4 straight games to start the year, tying a Major League record coming off of his 2018 MVP season. Scott, let's talk about Christian Yelich.
Well, I mean, how long is this podcast going to be? Because we could pretty much just have a Christian Yelich fan podcast at this point because there's so much. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. I can't even get into how impressed, even when, I mean, let's just compare it to the best Brewer seasons ever. And you're looking at just last year, for example. I mean, Robin Yount's 2 MVP seasons and bronze, and just to see what Yelich has done for so long, not only is it right up there, it very possibly could be the best Brewer season ever. And somehow he's doing better so far in 2019. So,
well, it's absolutely incredible. The guy's playing in another stratosphere, and I don't mean to just be, speaking in platitudes or being too simplistic with this, but honestly, this may be not only the hottest start of a Brewer in team history, but coming off of the year that he had last year, he has to start being in that conversation for, dare I say it, after a year and a week of games, but a legendary Brewer already. I mean, it's just incredible for the guy to come in, win the 2018 National League Most Valuable Player Award, and then start off this week. Now, obviously, he cannot maintain this clip, but I mean, the guy is literally homered in every game, and it's not like he's going. Not that this would be bad by any stretch, but it's not like he's going, 1 for 4 or 1 for 5 with 1 home run. The guy's hitting 500 on the year for his batting average at this point. Obviously, very early, very small sample size, but 3 RBIs today. I mean, he's putting up huge numbers. He had several walks today as well. I mean, it's just incredible. The guy does everything right. There's no facet of the game where he's weak. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to continue to homer every 3 official at-bats. He has 4 homers and 12 official at-bats. And like you said, he's walked 6 times already, at least 1 intentional that I could think of. And, he showed a tremendous amount of patience at the plate. And it's just incredible. I mean, he doesn't swing at bad pitches at all. It's
right.
It kind of people go through stretches like that. I mean, remember even Jesus Aguilar last year, since it's his bobblehead day, I guess I'll mention him. He went through a clip last year, but it was only a stretch of 10, 20 games, something like that, where he was just dialed in. And Yelich has done this now for over half a year. Really, I mean, over a year. I mean, it's insane.
Well, a half year maybe at this level, but even before that, when he went into the All-Star break, he obviously was an All-Star last year.
Right.
Even before this level of hot hitting, when he was, quote, only hitting, 288, I think it was, at the All-Star break last year.
Yeah, absolutely unreal. There's a stat. I have to look it up, but I'll get
No,
to it.
have the interns do it. That's what they're there for, Scott.
Okay. Since the All-Star break, Christian Yelich has hit 28 home runs on 59 fly balls.
I
That's
mean, it's it's incredible.
47% of his fly balls have been homers for over half a year now. Absolutely incredible. I have to give that one up to Jeremy Frank at MLB Random Stats. He was the one who came up with that. Our interns did not
Yep.
because our interns are terrible.
Yeah, no, we need to clean house on that again. But you're right. And Yelich is not only a great hitter, but he's also playing great defense. I mean, you're not losing a step with Christian Yelich. With a guy like Ryan Braun or using other examples around the league, you play a guy defensively who isn't the best defensive player, but he makes up for it with his offense. Tons of guys like that. But that's not Christian Yelich. He's a complete ball player. He's a five-tool talent. I mean, I literally cannot say enough good about Christian Yelich when it comes to baseball.
Yeah. And I guess one really interesting thing, as long as we're bringing up defense, this is probably the closest I'll get to segueing into something. It is kind of amazing, that Stearns, for example, takes a guy like Moustakas and he says, hey, you played second base before? Yeah, maybe a few years back, not in the pros, not really. Okay, yeah, we'll sign you and you'll just do that. Sound good? And he's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. For $10 million, I'll do whatever the hell you want. So it's like, okay.
But right.
But what Stearns realizes is that this is a league that is now getting dominated by outcomes that are not balls in play. And defense, I know it's important, but it's certainly not as important as it used to be. And when you can bring the stick that Mike Moustakas can and put him at second base, his defense could be overlooked because he brings so much more offensively. I mean, look at Corbin Burns today. Nobody got a ball in play after the first 3 innings because they'd all struck out. I mean, that's what's happening now. There's way more strikeouts. There's a few more walks. There's a lot more home runs. And, I mean, defense just isn't as important.
Well, and getting to your point about Moustakas and David Stearns' philosophy, I think you can also do that for 2 other reasons besides what I think you very rightly point out as being kind of a shift in the way that guys are viewed. But number one is the actual literal shift where you've got guys that are playing a bit out of what would have been considered normal positioning, even 5, 10, definitely 20 years ago. So Moustakas, is going to be shaded maybe to a part of the infield that he's a little bit more comfortable with a good chunk of the time, but also because the Brewers have been very strong up the middle defensively for a number of years. And we continue to be very strong up the middle defensively with Orlando Arcia at shortstop, who can cover a lot of ground, but also Lorenzo Cain and then Christian Yelich, in center and right field for the Brewers. So you've got a lot of guys that can cover a larger amount of territory than an average defender at shortstop or an average center fielder.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And, we did have one play where Moustakas was unable to turn double play. It actually turned out that even though he didn't have a heck of a lot on the throw, it actually still was a double play, but we just didn't challenge it. That was one of the extra outs that the umps decided to give to the Cardinals. But it didn't matter. We still took 3 out of 4, so no sour grapes there, guys.
That's right. And, so, just to finish unpacking this, the Brewers did see a bit of a controversy in Game 2 with an instant replay call. It seemed like Lorenzo Cain had slid in safe. Scott, do you think that instant replay is going to have to be reevaluated by Major League Baseball, or is this just one of these things that happens? Maybe fans didn't have a good look at it on the scoreboard, but we bill our show as a show by fans for fans, and I'll tell you, man, I was there from a fan's perspective and looking at the scoreboard and even the replays after the game. I couldn't see how Lorenzo Cain was called out on that stolen base attempt. Did you see something that the rest of us missed?
No, I mean, there's they showed 3 different angles, and one of them not sure, and one of them extremely obvious that he had definitely gotten the hand in there before the tag was applied. And I think that, unfortunately, instant replay in MLB is broken, despite how we want it, despite how, in theory, it should be a great thing. It's totally broken because close calls they're just not willing to overturn, and they just keep saying, well, I mean, if you're not sure, then I guess, just go with the call on the field, and that happens all the time. And do you remember how they say, like, oh, there is no tie go to the runner, when you run it out to first base? There's no tie or not sure, with anything, any kind of call. Like, I don't care what the call is on the field. Look at the replay and tell me what happened. I mean, it's not difficult. And I think that who's ever making the calls in New York is just too conservative with their approach. Like, they're just, I don't know. Are they afraid to do their job? I don't get it.
Yeah, no, it was a little frustrating. That is the loudest booing I've heard at Miller Park this week, at least. So I will say that, which is good because it means that it's not necessarily directed at the team on the field. It's directed more at the umpires and everything else. So, anyways, yeah, so it was a great first series. The Brewers again 3-1 after the first series of the year against the Cardinals, and optimism abounds. The team is now going to head on a road trip. So we have a series in Cincinnati. It's just the one series, and then a series at home again against the Chicago Cubs this week. So, Scott, let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk about the next week of Brewers baseball.
Well, to go out even a little bit further, as Craig, I assume he got this from an intern, but 20 of our 26 first games of the year are against the Cardinals, Cubs, and Dodgers, which is absolutely ridiculous. And the other 60,
I don't think that's accurate from our interns, because we go to Anaheim to play the Angels.
Well, that's just it. 20 out of 26. 3 are against the Reds on the road, and 3 are against.
I'm sorry. I thought you said 25 out of 26. Sorry, Scott. Sorry.
No, 20 out of 26, and then the other 6 are road games. 3 against Anaheim and 3 against the Reds. So, I mean, it's an incredibly tough stretch for your first month of the season. I actually hope that after 26 games, if we have at least 13 wins, I'm thrilled. Because
and let's also point out that the Reds have improved and that they're also within our division. So even not counting just the games against the Cubs and the Cardinals, we've also got Cincinnati coming up, a much improved team.
Yeah, absolutely. Road games are tough, and the Angels are no slouch either. They have the best player in the league, not named Christian Yelich. Mike Trout
right.
actually be the best player in the league, but
he's legitimately really, really, really good.
I can only hope that there's some day when people start debating Mike Trout or Christian Yelich. That'd be pretty awesome. That means that Yelich had an unbelievable career, but it's gonna be a rough start.
So what are let's go, I guess, between the two of us here, what are you projecting here? The Brewers have a 3-game series, again on the road, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday against the Reds, an off day on Thursday, and then they come back home to play the Cubs in a 3-game set on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and what should be a very good and very exciting and hopefully well-attended by Brewers fans series at Miller Park. So 6 games this week. Reds and Cubs, what are you projecting, Scott?
I actually think that somehow, what is good is, at least we have an off day in between, so that's kind of nice for traveling and whatnot. But I don't know. I hate to say it, but I think it's only going to be 500. And I'm actually going to say that we're going to somehow lose 2 or 3 at Cincinnati and then win 2 or 3 against the Cubs. Just because I really want to beat the Cubs, so I'm just going to go with my heart there.
All right, I'll take the more optimistic tack this week. I'm going to say that we're going to be 4-2. That we'll get 2 or 3 from both teams. So I'm going to think optimistically. 2 or 3 from Cincinnati, 2 or 3 from the Cubs. I think it was huge that we won this game today and got 3 or 4 rather than split the series with the Cardinals. I think that gives us a little bit of momentum. So, I'll go 4-2 this week.
All right, that sounds like a plan. Just remember also that former Brewers pitching coach / miracle worker Derek Johnson is now the pitching coach in Cincinnati, and I'm very interested to see what he is going to be able to do with that very young, very raw, but very talented staff. Particularly, I was interested in seeing what he's going to do with Luis Castillo. I actually drafted him in fantasy, but he's a fireballer that's always had control issues, and I want to see what he'll be able to do. It'll be interesting. But, I expect that Reds team to improve significantly on last year. Their offense is obviously pretty stacked actually. And
Yep,
it'll be
they are.
interesting.
They did have a rain out, at least one rain out this week, so they're 1-1 right now going into the series. Actually, I don't know if they finished today's ball game yet, but 1-1 as it stands. And Tanner Rourke is going to take the mound for the Reds in Game 1 for Cincinnati against Zach Davies, making his first start of the year.
Good pitcher, underrated. Both of them actually.
Well, we'll see what happens. Davies is interesting this year. Of all of our starting pitchers, I'm curious as to what Zach is going to be able to do coming back from injury. I think there's a lot of wild cards in the Brewers starting rotation with the number of young guys. But that being said, we kind of know where their potential is at least. Zach Davies, not so much. I think injuries are always interesting. It seems like they're especially interesting in Milwaukee. So we'll see what kind of year he has. And speaking of injuries, that's my segue here, Scott. Let's talk a little bit about some unfortunate Brewers news this week. Corey Knebel, former All-Star, former closer, key component of the bullpen, is out for the year, having not even made an appearance, injuring his shoulder in spring training. What are your thoughts on the ramifications for the Brewers bullpen with Corey Knebel?
It's pretty bad. I mean, I'm really unhappy with it. I mean, obviously, we lost Bobby Wall earlier this year, who, again, was traded for we traded Keon Broxton for him, and he was hopefully going to be like a 6th, 7th inning type guy, and he is also out for the year. So, yeah, the injuries are starting to pile up. We still hope that we get Jeremy Jeffers back. I'm really hoping within the next couple weeks here, because I don't know that we can go more than a couple weeks without at this point, it's pretty much just Josh Hader and everybody else. So, I mean,
you're right. And I don't think our colleague Tom Hondercourt has even mentioned anything about a timetable on Jeffers' return. So he's not really using his press pass to our advantage. But I have heard nothing on a timetable for Jeffers' return. Have you heard anything on that yet, Scott?
I'd encourage you to look at probably other sources, because if Tom's going to send it out, 10 other people already have. So
that's true. So true.
Adam, what's his name? Adam McCalvey. He actually sent out something just before this taping, saying that he threw another bullpen session or extended spring training session today. No setbacks. Everything felt fine, and he's still hoping to maybe join mid-April, but that is very optimistic at this point. I think it's going to be probably closer to May 1st, but that's just me. That's just what my source Tom Carter, or I'm sorry, anonymous source Tom Carter.
He's anonymous.
Yeah,
Scott, Tom Carter is our anonymous source. Let's be clear. We cannot say Tom Carter's name on the air. It has to be, we have to put it in some sort of a code or some sort of, hidden fashion, because that's the definition of anonymous. So instead of saying Tom Carter, from here on out, we have to kind of make a rule. No Tom Carter, but say T Carter or Tom C. And maybe we could have the intern, tweet out a covert picture of him rather than his actual photograph, like we were discussing, because he wants to remain anonymous. That's sort of the whole point.
Somebody on Twitter actually said that they were really impressed that we would give out the name of our anonymous source on Twitter. So, I was happy to, just get the accolades and the kudos from them. But, I guess in the future, I'll say this. Tom Carter, I'm really sorry that I keep saying your name. And you're a phenomenal human being and ticket office manager, and also a great inside source. So, keep that info coming. Don't shut the pipe.
You guys are your anonymous source, I tell you.
Hey, is it Tom? No, just kidding. Hey, everybody, we are joined on the set by our old friend Chris Zantow. Chris, thanks for joining us on kind of a last-minute notice here. We're missing Craig and Chad. We think that they're still recovering from some opening day over celebrations, but glad to have you here joining us on the set. Chris, how are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me again. I guess I'm pinch hitting, if you will.
Well, we'd love to have you. Actually, you'd be more reliable than either one of those guys or our anonymous source, Tom Carter. So glad to have you.
Well, Tom's pretty reliable. He's giving us that info. So.
And Chris, we should ask you first before we even get into our next topic. But we had you on the show back in, I think it was February. It was cold. It was snowy. Now it's bright. There's sunshine. There's baseball being played at Miller Park. Do you have any updates now in this season of optimism about your book or its coming release?
Well, I will say that today I decided, because it's the anniversary of Bud Selig buying the team in bankruptcy court, that, of course, was the Seattle Pilots, that I put the names of the chapters of the book out on Twitter, which was a big deal for me, I thought.
That's exciting. That's really exciting. Do we know a published date yet?
I'm still waiting on that, and I hope to have more info soon. I'm also still waiting on the cover. They're trying to track down an appropriate image, which I can imagine for publisher is pretty difficult.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And we'll just remind our listeners again, the name of the upcoming book that you wrote is Building the Brewers, Bud Selig, and the Return of Major League Baseball to Milwaukee. And it will be published by McFarland Press or McFarland Publications here in 2019. So very excited to see that.
I'm certainly looking forward to it. It's been a long road. I started it in 2015. I think I told your listeners back when you guys interviewed me the first time.
Yeah, well, there are listeners now, Chris. You're on the team, so glad to have you, and excited about the book, and also excited to hear your opinion about the Brewers bullpen and Corey Knebel. And Scott and I were just talking about, obviously a great news week for the Brewers, going 3-1 against the Cardinals, but also getting a little bit of bad news with the Corey Knebel injury. And I guess my first question to you as you join us is, number one, how do you think that affects the Brewers bullpen as it's currently set up? And then we'll segue and ask everybody here, do you guys think that the Brewers still need to make a move to bring in some more help for the bullpen? I saw another report today from our colleague Tom Haudricourt poo-pooed it, but I think others have reported it as being fairly accurate that the Brewers are still talking to Craig Kimbrell. Do you guys think that that might happen? And let's talk about those couple things.
Well, I think being at the game today, I was there with a friend, and you see a tale of kind of two bullpens over the weekend. You saw the set of guys that pitched opening day and the set of guys that pitched today, and pretty encouraging, although a small sample size, out of Matt Albers and Jacob Barnes.
Yeah, and both those guys look really sharp today. And Albers didn't look bad in his previous appearance either. I know he had let one inherited runner score, but kind of limited the damage a couple nights ago. So good to see that after Albers really struggled at the end of the year in 2018. So if he can come back and, be a part of that solid core in the pen, that would be pretty exciting. And do you guys think, though, that we're going to have to make a move like sign Kimbrell? And Scott, maybe you can speak to some of our Twitter stuff. I know we put it out on social media this week. Do you want to kind of relay what those stats were that our interns put together?
Our stats on what? Just anything?
The Brewers bringing in Craig Kimbrell, Scott. You got to pay attention during the podcast.
Well, no, I was like, what's yeah. I was like, okay. No, first of all, I'm definitely going to say that, as somebody else on Twitter said, I don't have their name, but Tom H. is definitely carrying the water for the Milwaukee Brewers. That was an article published for the Brewers by the Brewers, and unfortunately, it was not for readers of the Journal Sentinel or the Journal Sentinel, who pays him money to actually give him to give actual information. But unfortunately, no, it's totally not true. In this case, I have multiple sources that will tell me that we are definitely still talking to Kimbrell, and it was sort of our way of giving a little bit of a line in the sand, even though we don't have a line in the sand, to say that we weren't going to raise our current offer to Kimbrell. But no.
Right.
Definitely still talking to him. I definitely still think that we still need a guy like Kimbrell, who, I mean, realistically can basically replace a Corey Knebel. And I think that of our bullpen, the strength of our team last year was indeed our bullpen. And unfortunately, we could see some real heartbreaking close late losses if we don't have some absolute firepower at the back end of that bullpen. And I think right now we're hurting.
Yeah, when we were like midway through spring training and some of those reports, started coming out about the Brewers' interest in Kimbrel, I at that point thought, wow, what a great addition, only because it would really supplement and be like this huge bonus to have in our bullpen when you have Hader, Kimbrel, Knebel, Jeffers. Now after these couple, injuries to both Knebel and Jeffers, and Knebel's being really serious and missing the whole year. It seems like it's more a necessity, unfortunately, than a luxury, which I think it was a few weeks ago. Chris, what do you think about possibly adding Craig Kimbrel or another bullpen arm?
I think that it'll probably happen. I, of course, I'm not Craig Kimbrel, of course, but I question how long does a guy really want to sit around and not play? And
right.
Even if he signs a 1-year deal, that's a good move on his part, because he can go out and just keep proving himself and then sign the multi-year contract after this year.
Yeah, and I could see the Brewers even going up to 2 years with a guy like Kimbrel, who's got such a long track record. But yeah, absolutely. If they get a higher, average annual value than maybe he might get from another club, that's where the Brewers have maybe found a bit of a weakness in the current system. You saw that with Yasmani Grandal, earlier this offseason, where we give out what I consider to be a fairly high dollar amount for him, but for only 1 year. So the team isn't hamstrung for years and years down the road with a bad contract. It's essentially 1 year, and maybe we sign him for another 1-year deal after this season. You never know. But either way, the club isn't hamstrung with an $18-something million contract every season for the next 4 years.
Yeah, you don't want another Eric Gagne type, That was a different story, obviously, but
don't say that name.
Yeah.
But I guess
man.
thing I kind of wanted to point out is that, when you look at years past, we were able to bring up talent from within to bolster the bullpen halfway through the season. We did that with Josh Hader. We did it with Corbin Burns. And
yep.
This year, I hate to say it, but the well is a little dry right now. We really don't have anybody coming up this year is my guess. The closest we probably have, to a major leaguer is probably Zach Brown, who's still in Double-A. And so
yeah.
I don't see anybody making the jump. We have some really good pitchers in Double-A. I think Marcus Stipplin's down there. There's a few guys down there that could probably help this team in 2 years, but I don't think that anyone's really going to be able to step up and make that jump to the majors this year and be effective in the back of the pen, unfortunately. So if we don't have it from within, then that's when you got to look at other directions. And I've heard some slight rumors about, maybe pulling off some kind of a trade. But if we do something like that, then we unfortunately are going to be giving up some of that talent in our farm system. And as a small market, that should be kind of a last resort. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, and a couple things at that point really quick. I think Zach Brown is actually fairly close to being ready, kind of like Corbin Burns was last year. We do have Jake Patrica, who's a veteran guy, sent to AAA to start the year, but he at least is a veteran. And we have signed since our last taping. We did sign and already seen make an appearance, Alex Wilson, who the Brewers picked up, I believe off of waivers or as a free agent after being released by Cleveland. So, but a longtime Tiger Major League vet. And he had a successful first outing with the Brewers, and I guess it remains to be seen how, effective of an arm he'll be out of the pen. But there is a guy with at least some pedigree coming out of the Brewers bullpen, from a late spring training acquisition. Kind of like last year, maybe with a Dan Jennings type pickup at the end of spring training. David Stern seems to do that every year for the past few years.
Yeah, there's definitely options. I just don't think I would put any of them, on that are ready right now. I just wouldn't put any of them anywhere near the caliber of Hader or Burns, unfortunately. They're good. It was good pickups for depth, so that we're not, completely in trouble when, two of our key bullpen people go down. But yeah, they're good, but not quite Hader or Burns.
Right. So, all right. Well, last question here, I guess, before we switch over to our Rapid 9 Around the Horn trivia. Were you guys surprised by any of the roster moves or the final guys to make the 25-man roster going into the year? Chris, why don't we start with you? And obviously the roster wasn't set until a couple hours before game time on Thursday. Was there anybody that made the team that was a surprise, or anyone that did not make the team that you were surprised by?
I don't think so. The only thing I kept coming back to toward the tail end was the possibility of the Kimbrel signing. That rumor that was floating around that they were still looking, and they were taking it up kind of to the last minute, and are they going to sign the guy or not? And that was kind of surprising to me that it didn't happen.
Yeah, fair enough. Scotty, how about you?
I guess I'm slightly surprised that we would have the sort of middle infield group of Perez. I thought would make it, but then after that, I was kind of looking at maybe 2 out of 3 between Dubon, Saladino, and Spangenberg. But all 3 of them made it. I thought we were going to maybe keep an extra arm, especially with the injuries to the bullpen. I thought we would go that route, but we did not. So, I mean, congrats to them. They all made it.
Yeah, so right now the Brewers are carrying 13 pitchers, which I think is, around or maybe even one more than many teams. But so I was a little surprised as well that one of the 2 between Saladino and Spangenberg didn't make the team. Dubon with his service clock, I kind of expected to start the year in AAA, so we'll see what happens, when May hits or, mid-May hits when his service clock wouldn't start for this season. So maybe that's a potential move going forward. I will say that the one move that I saw as being a bit of a surprise was that we are keeping all of Peralta and Woodruff and Corbin Burns in the starting rotation, and Chase Anderson is starting the year in the bullpen. You guys have any thoughts on Chase Anderson and whether or not he's going to remain in the pen the entire year, or maybe we'll see him in the starting rotation again at some point?
I'd agree with you. I was shocked at that too. I thought that one of the 3 in the back end would shake out and Chase would be in the rotation. And then I also kind of wondered, and I hadn't looked at the schedule closely, how April oftentimes we'll start with 4 guys and then work a 5th in.
Right.
So I was kind of also, I agree with you. I was a little surprised at that. I'm kind of wondering if maybe he will wind up back in the rotation. We'll see, how this back 3 work out over the first couple of weeks or so.
Yeah. My problem, a slight problem, not a huge deal, but I thought Brandon Woodruff pitched so incredibly well out of the bullpen last year that maybe that's a role that suits him the best. Not that he couldn't start or wouldn't be an effective starter, but just because he was that dominant in the bullpen for the Brewers in both September and in the postseason. And thought maybe that might be a good role for him rather than trying out a guy like Anderson who's really not pitched much in the pen, at least not the last few seasons. So, it wasn't about having a bad option in Woodruff. It was more just, this guy was such an effective bullpen piece that maybe that's where he's best suited. So, that was my only real surprise outside of not keeping, somebody like Saladino or Spangenberg.
Yeah,
I think you can argue the same. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you can kind of, there's always been that argument in the background too about Josh Hader being a starter, and he's certainly effective out of this world, out of the bullpen. And
right.
Do you want the guy every 5 days, or do you want him every couple of days throwing?
Right. Yeah. No, and that's exactly it. So yeah, and that. Other than that, it seemed like everything else was fairly well decided. We kind of knew our battles, and we should mention on this podcast, since it happened since we last taped, the Brewers have traded Eric Kratz to the San Francisco Giants, who it was known that he probably wasn't going to make the team barring an injury. Craig Counsell and David Stearns have been fairly upfront since day one of spring training that, yes, Manny Grandal is our number 1 catcher, Manny Pena is our number 2, and Eric Kratz, if there's a spot we can find for him, great. If not, we're going to have to, unfortunately, either get him through waivers and send him to the minor leagues or trade him, and unfortunately he was traded. But we'll always remember Eric Kratz and the great contributions that he made to the team, from June onwards last season, and certainly in the postseason. He was a great guy to have around the clubhouse. So just wanted to throw out a props to Eric Kratz for all that he brought to the Brewers for his looks like lone season in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I would actually. This is going to be a kind of interesting comparison, but I would say that there are very few Brewers that made such a great impression on the fan base as a whole in such a short amount of time. In their tenure.
Yeah.
with the club. I mean, Kratz was only here for a couple months. I mean, who else has really done that? I mean, the only person I could think of is CC Sabathia.
Yeah, right. No, you're absolutely right. And
just putting him in that category is like crazy. You're a backup catcher, but he was just a great presence on the team. Just an overall great guy.
Yeah, and Stephen Vogt was injured all last season, and Manny Pena had kind of a down year last year. So to have a guy like Erik Kratz, totally unexpectedly, guy acquired, off of, or in a trade from the Yankees for, cash or virtually nothing to come in and do what he did is memorable. And you guys were all long-suffering Brewer fans and have been around for a while. So to see the way that the Brewers honor the teams that have done well, the 82 team, I think we're going to see more of the 08 team going forward. And we all remember 2011. But I think that in years to come and, just discussions amongst Brewer fans and hopefully from the organization when we're talking about the 2018 Brewers postseason team, I think Erik Kratz is going to be a fan favorite when he's invited back to things in Milwaukee and team reunions and autograph signings or whatever else he's doing in the Milwaukee area. I have a pretty strong suspicion that it's going to be hard for that guy to buy a beer in Milwaukee for a long time to come.
Yeah, and certainly throw Curtis Granderson in with him too.
Yeah,
veteran, great veteran, and just great personality and fantastic leadership down the stretch.
Hey, the guy sacrificed a tooth to the Brewers. I think that in and of itself is worth a free meal or beverage in Milwaukee going forward. So yeah, absolutely. All right, so guys, that's a good recap here of our first week of the year. Again, very exciting to see the Brewers win the first series of the year against the St. Louis Cardinals, and 3-1 going on to our first road trip of the year in Cincinnati, and then a big home series against the Cubs. So before we end the show, Scott, I'd like to kick it back to you. You have been counseling with our interns here as a manager of our internship program. What is our tweet of the week that they gave you this week?
Tweet of the week comes from none other than former Milwaukee Brewers employee Cassandra Polanski. After 4 games in the Brewers season here, she wrote, if I want to know if the Brewers are playing, I'll just ask if Yelich homered. That's pretty synonymous at this point.
Cool.
Yep.
I like
awesome
that tweet.
Yelich 4 homers, won a game, 4 games.
That's exciting.
Awesome. Great tweet.
Yeah, great tweet. All right, don't fire the interns. That was a good one that they found. And thank you, Cassandra, for commenting on our show here. We would like to invite you to subscribe, if you have not, to our Twitter account. It is Brew Crew Review 1 at Twitter. And continue to send us questions via email. It is Brew Crew Review podcast with an S at gmail.com. We will get to your questions next episode. So guys, with that, let's remember to stay classy and go Brewers.
Go Brewers.
Go Brewers.